Early on the morning of December 8th, 2019, a private plane carrying Gerard Anthony Higgins, better known by his stage name Juice WRLD, traveled from Los Angeles to Midway Airport in Chicago. Juice WRLD was at the time the undisputed hottest young rapper in the country, and legends such as Drake, Eminem, and Dr. Dre had labeled him a true musical genius. His first commercial hit, Lucid Dreams, had reached number 2 on the Billboard charts and was for a time the most downloaded song in any genre, beating out God's Plan by Drake and Shallow by Lady Gaga. He'd been invited to collaborate with Travis Scott on Astroworld, to create music for the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse soundtrack, and to work on a project with the phenomenally popular K-pop band BTS. With him on the plane that night were 11 other people, including his girlfriend and other friends, his manager, and members of his security team. Videos taken by his entourage and later published on YouTube showed the rapper and his traveling companions laughing and relaxed while en route. This is notable because with them on the plane was an extraordinary quantity of drugs, over 70 pounds of marijuana, bottles of prescription cough syrup and other medications, as well as 3 guns with metal-piercing bullets and a high-capacity ammunition magazine. Unbeknownst to the people on board, waiting on the ground in Chicago was a team of federal officers from the Gang Investigation Federal Task Force who had earlier that night received information that guns and drugs might be on board. The feds waited out of sight until the plane pulled into a private hangar, and the pilot cut the engines. Then they approached with their guns drawn and demanded everyone to stay on board while they examined the aircraft. A few minutes later, a drug-sniffing dog made what's called a positive alert while sniffing the group's luggage, indicating the presence of illegal narcotics, and the feds began a thorough search. Juice WRLD panicked. According to his girlfriend, he quickly swallowed several prescription painkillers in an effort to conceal them from authorities. On its face, this was an inexplicably foolish act. The 70 pounds of marijuana on board the plane had an estimated dispensary value of around $500,000, enough to render possession of a few pills an inconsequential footnote to the crimes for which he would surely be charged. But in the moment, Juice WRLD saw it differently. According to his girlfriend, he had been drinking the codeine-based narcotic lean since he left Los Angeles and was already high before touching down in Chicago. When the feds began conducting the search, Juice WRLD exhibited outward signs of paranoia, a common side effect of opioid intoxication, and he quickly downed the drugs. Within a minute of taking the narcotics, Juice WRLD started to convulse, and then to foam from the mouth and nose, a telltale sign of opioid overdose. Federal agents quickly laid Juice WRLD on his side and cleared his nasal passages, and then administered up his nose 2 doses of Narcan, an emergency treatment for overdoses. Juice WRLD immediately woke up and his vitals stabilized, but he remained incoherent as the officers and his friends attempted to communicate with him. Paramedics arrived a few minutes later and rushed the rapper to Advocate Christ Medical Center less than 10 minutes away. By the time he arrived, he was fading fast, as the combined effect of the codeine and the Percocet was causing his breathing to slow and his bodily systems to shut down. The doctors did what they could, but a short time later he passed away, and the music world was left to wonder what might have been. Juice WRLD was just 21 years old. I'm Jason Beckerman.
I'm Derek Kaufman.
This is Last Days, Juice WRLD.
The tributes to Juice WRLD came from the biggest names in rap like Drake, Travis Scott, and Post Malone, all of whom talked both about the tragic loss of such a young life, but also of Juice WRLD's unique talent. DJ Academics, who was one of the first established musicians to discover Juice WRLD and who then became a friend and mentor, wrote that he was, quote, a shining example of talent, creativity, and the ability to connect deeply with fans. He revolutionized the genre and brought a new wave of emo rap to the forefront. It's heartbreaking to see such a bright light extinguished so soon. Eminem, who 25 years earlier had likewise been a new and disruptive force in rap, called Juice WRLD, quote, a generational talent, and, quote, one of those guys that could do everything. He could sing, he could rap, he had the melodic thing down. His potential was so off the charts. Juice WRLD's rise to rap stardom was circuitous and unpredictable. His mother was a devout Christian who forbade him from listening to rap music for fear of its corruptive influence. So, from the time he was a very young child, he instead developed an appreciation for pop rock emo bands like Panic at the Disco and Fall Out Boy, and his personal favorite, 80s new age punk rocker, Billy Idol. This early exposure to rock shaped his musical taste and his love for fusing together multiple genres, but growing up on the south side of Chicago was only a matter of time before rap entered the picture. And by middle school, Juice WRLD began stringing together lyrics and quickly gained a reputation in his community as a gifted freestyler. Here he is in an impromptu rap battle in his high school hallway in 2015.
And acid rap that don't believe me, you get popped like a blackhead. I spit heat fast like a crackhead. Thinking that you in it, but you don't know this. Focus, now I got ADD now, swarming like locusts. Who is this? Making hand signs like you deaf or something. That's okay, I be on the beat, spitting fast like crystal meth or something. Really is nothing, making assumptions, it's nothing. Make you gonna put you in the oven for no reason or something. I'm the best at it. Yes, I'm the best at it.
As Juice WRLD honed his craft and began to personalize his music, he started incorporating introspective and often melancholic themes that would become his trademark for the rest of his career. Just a teenager, Juice WRLD was the proverbial old soul, writing lyrics about heartbreak, addiction, and mental health, subjects he knew could resonate with a generation of listeners.
The evolution of Juice WRLD's musical style corresponded with the rise of a new wave of hip-hop that had emerged a few years earlier from SoundCloud, a platform that allowed musicians to publish songs without the need for traditional industry support. This movement, called SoundCloud rap, took off in the mid-2010s and was characterized by a raw, unfiltered sound and its embrace of genres outside traditional hip-hop. It was a perfect fit for Juice WRLD, who was, as mentioned, proficient at blending genres and whose music gravitated towards heavier, more depressive subjects. Publishing his music to the SoundCloud platform, Juice WRLD began to gain attention as early as 2016 for his melodic flow, but his lyrics were underdeveloped and centered on time-worn rap themes of money, guns, and girls that were too indistinct to break through. As his music career floundered, his faith in himself waned. Depression set in, his girlfriend left him and broke his heart, and he took a short-lived job working at a car plant to earn enough money to buy weed or knock off Xanax from a local street dealer. But as the saying goes, from great suffering emerges profound creativity, and as Juice WRLD struggled with his mental health and his drug use worsened, his music began to evolve. And in the summer of 2017, he released on SoundCloud his first full-length mixtape called 999. The second track, Lucid Dreams, is a brilliant blend of rock and contemporary rap, integrating a sample of Sting's 1993 Shape of My Heart and a classic melody with modern production to create a unique and memorable sound. But it's the lyrics that set Lucid Dreams apart. Inspired by the pain and heartbreak of his recent breakup and his feelings of betrayal, loss, and emotional turmoil, Juice WRLD called his song his therapy session to get over the pain.
I still see your shadows in my room. Can't take back the love that I gave you. It's to the point where I love and I hate you, and I cannot change you, so I must replace you. Oh, easier said than done. I thought you were the one listening to my heart.
Jason, it's one of those undeniable songs. When you hear Lucid Dreams, it sounds like a song that's existed for many years and sounds like part of the fabric even on its first listen.
If anybody out there does not know who Juice WRLD is, and there's a lot of people not familiar with him, he had a very, very short career. If you put this song on, I can guarantee you've heard it before.
Yep.
It was ubiquitous for a time in 2017, and really in 2018. And it is as catchy a song as there is, but the lyrics are just sublime. I mean, it's what makes it really special. He's a 19-year-old kid at the time who is somehow finding words that encapsulate teen heartache that the most sort of established songwriters, everybody's been trying to capture the loss of love and heartbreak in song forever. And you listen to the words of this song, and they are just brilliant. They just capture the essence of what teen heartbreak is like. And it was what made it so popular. People listened to the song, and everybody could identify with what he was talking about.
I think you're right, but it also sounds so new and fresh while also timeless at the same time. It's got this fusion of hip-hop beats with those themes of heartbreak, which are absolutely timeless, mental anguish and things of that nature that are commonly associated with that SoundCloud rap sound. When I heard the song for the first time, I remember thinking, this sounds like nothing that's out there. It really doesn't. And then from that moment on, every song started to sound like it. And that's when you know you have a real trailblazer, as he sort of defined this new mode of rap. I grew up on sort of harder edge gangster rap about sort of guns and drugs and all that kind of stuff. This was something different, and he had that melody. Like, there was a sing-songy quality to the way the delivery mechanism of those lyrics, and it was just perfect.
He didn't invent this idea of this depressive rock, this real introspective rock. I mean, you hear a lot in Travis Scott does a lot of this. Some really big artists are into it. Drake does some of this as well. But he did it with, it's a different feel to it. I'm not a sophisticated enough music guy to be able to articulate that feel. But if you listen to what Juice WRLD was putting out, it's different. It's a different kind of music. It's a difference in kind from what you were hearing from other people. And frankly, in many ways, it was better because I think he was such a musical savant. I mean, he had the rock background, but he also took a lot from sort of an Afro-Caribbean kind of beat. He did a lot of things like that to bring different genres together and meld them seamlessly. And it's like I said, it keeps saying it's different and I think better.
Two other things I wanted to point out about him is there's an openness about his struggles that is often lacking in a lot of rap music. It's a lot of machismo, a lot of boasting about things you have and sort of aspirations that you're leaning for. That wasn't what his music was about. And the other thing is there's so many influences in it. It kind of reminds me in a way of like a Kanye West, who's influenced by so many different types of music. Love him or hate him, and I'm not a huge Kanye West fan, he's undeniably sort of a musical genius.
Right.
And in Juice WRLD, you could hear elements of that, because to weave in this 1993 sort of new agey Sting song into a musical track like Lucid Dreams, it's just a stroke of genius.
And
it really is.
It is when he found himself, because we talked earlier about how his initial songs were about, I've got so much money, I've got the girls, I've got the cars, and he completely abandoned that as he matured. When you're 16, you see something, you want it, you write about it, because that's what he was emulating other artists. But he's now doing things that are just different than what other artists are doing, much more sort of vulnerable in what he writes, much more biographic in what he writes. And it was really, he's just a genius, and you're seeing that genius start to emerge.
At such a young age, too. And Lucid Dreams caught the ear of rapper Waka Flocka, who tweeted about the song when it first came out on SoundCloud. And before long, established producers and music video directors were reaching out to Juice WRLD to work with him. Legendary Chicago rapper Lil Bibby signed Juice WRLD to his label Grade A Productions, and soon Juice WRLD was the most talked about up-and-comer in the rap world. His next release, All the Girls Are the Same, was also a SoundCloud hit, and it continued Juice WRLD's examination of the pain and frustration of romantic relationships. And at about the same time as Juice WRLD was breaking through, two other prominent artists, XXXTentacion and Lil Peep, were also finding success on SoundCloud by delving into themes of depression and drug use that Juice WRLD was just beginning to explore. Together, these three artists were at the forefront of the SoundCloud rap scene and were helping to forge a new path for hip-hop, one that embraced vulnerability and real emotional depth.
The thing about SoundCloud is it was so disruptive because it was this platform. We've seen a lot of disruption in the music industry for the last 20 years, going way back to the democratization of sounds and everything else. But this is a platform that a lot of young rappers would put up their music, and it was more established people that could actually do something with that music and make money off of it, frankly, would go to find young rappers. And he was, he and XXXTentacion and Lil Peep were these three at basically the same age, basically coming up together, that were really the three success stories of that point.
Yeah, they were forging a new path. They were sort of creating a new type of music. The other big SoundCloud success story is Lil Nas X, who took a very obscure 9 Inch Nails sample and turned it into the biggest song maybe in history, with Old Town Road and fused rap and country music. So it was really I always thought of SoundCloud as this incredible laboratory. You talk about the democratization of music. It just allowed everyone in their home to sort of sample music and figure out new blends. And it's been a great thing for music. I think when everyone was just hustling along, trying to get a record deal, you got a certain blend of ears. You got a certain type of music that they were trying to impress a certain subset of people. Now it's much more broad.
I'm glad you brought up Lil Nas X. He's sort of a slightly different kind of music than these three guys.
Sure.
But all four of them.
A little more tongue-in-cheek, a little more sort of jokey in some ways.
But they pushed their themes toward hip-hop mainstream. But I think maybe more accurately, they changed what it meant to be hip-hop mainstream. Right? Could you say that Lil Nas X is not hip-hop mainstream? It's the biggest hip-hop song. It's also the biggest country song of the last 10 years. And you have somebody like Juice WRLD. He certainly is not typical what you think of when you think of hip-hop, but at the same time, it's that sound that became, as popular. Like I said, he was more popular than Drake for a little while, more popular than Lady Gaga, a very different type of music. Number 2 on the Billboard charts. That's not the urban or the hip hop Billboard charts. That's the Billboard 100. He was number 2. This was a mainstream song, and I think hip hop has changed over the years, and this is just another example.
Another way of saying it is they bent hip hop to their will. I mean, when I was growing up, you had to have sort of gangster bona fides, right? You had to get your music past Suge Knight and P Diddy and people like that. Those were the taste makers, and then everyone followed suit. Here, you're on SoundCloud. You just have to get an audience out there in the world somewhere, and hip hop had to bend to what they were doing because it was undeniably resonating with people.
But just as quickly as the SoundCloud rap scene emerged, it vanished. In 2017, Lil Peep died of a fentanyl overdose after taking a tainted batch of Percocet. And 8 months later, XXXTentacion was murdered in a gang-style killing. This marked something of a turning point for Juice WRLD. His musical themes became darker and more depressive. Gone were tales of teenage heartache, replaced by songs about childhood trauma, death, and predictions of his own demise. 4 days after XXX died, Juice WRLD dropped a tribute to his two fallen friends, which again showcased his absolute brilliance as a songwriter and his ability to encapsulate grief and fear.
Question, but this time I'm gonna be quiet. This time, ain't nothing like the feeling of uncertainty, the eeriness of silence. This time it was so unexpected. Last time it was the drugs he was lacing. All legends fall in the making. Sorry, truth, dying young, demon youth. Was a 27 club.
It was also near this time that Juice WRLD began to evolve away from the candid exploration of love and emotional heartache that had typified his earlier hits towards themes of substance abuse, mental health, and the desire to escape from reality. As before, these themes reflected his real-life struggles. In a late 2018 interview, Juice WRLD said that he had begun using drugs as early as the 6th grade, about the time he was first introduced to rap music because, he said, he wanted to emulate the lifestyle of the musicians he admired.
So my family putting me on to all this different music, Future, Gucci, all these niggas talking about drugs, bro.
You can't help but ignore how fun or how interesting, at least, they're making Xans and Lean and all this shit sound.
Yeah, bro. Like, when I heard Future, the first song I ever heard by Future was Ain't No Way Around It. The second song I've ever heard by Future is Dirty Sprite, like off the first Dirty Sprite mixtape.
Mm-hmm.
And that shit had me wanting to sip lean at like 11, 12 years old, bro.
Yeah.
So,
Throughout high school, Juice WRLD's use of drugs continued to escalate, which, he believed at the time, helped his creative process. By 2018, with Lucid Dreams and All the Girls Are the Same now established hits, and in the aftermath of Little Peeps and XXXTentacion's deaths, Juice WRLD released Wasted and Lean With Me, both of which contain detailed descriptions of the physical sensations of drug use, as well as the emotional and physical toll of his addiction.
Drugs got me sweating, but the room getting colder. Looking at the devil and the angel on my shoulder. Will I die tonight? I don't know. Is it over? Looking for my next high. I'm looking for.
And by late 2018, Juice WRLD had a string of chart-topping hits under his belt and was living a rock star lifestyle. He was rich and enormously famous and flying on private jets to play concerts at larger and larger venues. There's countless of videos online, many of them captured by Juice WRLD's entourage and others, showing him casually sipping lean on planes, in hotel rooms, and during studio sessions. The frequency and casualness of his use illustrates just how deeply ingrained drug use had become in his daily life. And it wasn't just lean. Juice WRLD acknowledged during this time that he was taking anti-anxiety drugs like Xanax regularly, and his girlfriend, Ali Lottie, would later say that he had a developing dependency on the painkiller Percocet. He was not in physical pain, she said, but instead used the Percocet to quiet the sounds of his demons. And it is against this backdrop that Juice WRLD boarded the plane that night and headed to Chicago, armed with huge amounts of lean and prescription medications. And, you know, Jason, it's hard to ignore one of the most sort of the strangest facts, frankly, about the circumstances of his death were on that plane were 70 pounds of marijuana. And to put that in context, this is a typical joint has about a gram of marijuana, and there's 453 grams in a pound, and he had 70 pounds of marijuana. This is not recreational use type of amount. So your mind immediately goes to, was this for distribution? It's 31,000 joints. I don't care how many friends you have, you're not smoking that much.
So let's repeat that point. It's 31,000 marijuana joints worth of marijuana.
I don't care if you got Cheech and Chong in your
We're talking about your
backseat.
average,
Yeah.
daily use kind of joint. 31,000 of them.
It's a distribution amount. That's what, when you see the bricks of marijuana, that's the amount he
There
had.
are 12 people on that plane. That's obviously not just for their personal use. And you have to ask the question, why did he have so much on board? By the way, if you had this in hefty bags, for example, it would basically take up the entire interior of the plane.
Yeah.
Instead, they were what's the word? Instead, they were vacuum sealed into 1 pound bricks. There were 70 of them stacked into duffel bags like you might see in a movie about a giant drug delivery. There were 70 of these 1 pound bricks. Again, it just doesn't. Let's get rid of the idea that it was possibly for personal use, but who's he distributing it to and why? It's a lot of speculation.
The street value of that amount of marijuana is probably around $500,000, right? So this is not something you buy in a dime bag at the park to smoke a joint. This is a lot of marijuana. And so there are theories out there. Tell us about one of them that you've heard circulating online, because it's quite interesting. I don't think Juice WRLD, who was a wildly successful musician, was just running a drug empire.
Yeah, one of the theories that you see repeated over and over again online, and it makes some sense. Whether it's true or not, I can't speak to, but it makes some sense. In California, it's the pot growing capital of the world, and there are places you can buy large quantities of marijuana for a lot cheaper than you can in many other parts of the country. If you go to a dispensary, you're going to pay more. In California, there's a lot of taxes, but if you go and you do it illegally, basically directly from a grow house, basically, you can buy it much more cheaply. So the theory is that he would come to California. He had two houses, one in Chicago where he was from and one in LA. He would come to LA and then go up to Central California where the marijuana fields are, and he would buy huge quantities of marijuana. And the theory is they would bring it back to Chicago with him on these private planes and then distribute it to friends, people he knew growing up, whoever it was, and either for their personal use, or maybe both for their personal
to
use,
make money,
and then for them to resell. So as opposed to, he's the guy who's gotten out, he's made all this money, right?
With deep ties to Chicago, which has drug problems throughout. It's a big urban area,
right? And so instead of coming back and sort of handing out cash to basically all the people that he's kind of, has now left behind, he's moved to LA, he lives in a mansion, the whole thing. He's handing out large quantities of marijuana to them that they can then make an income from selling. This is the theory out there online. Again, it makes a lot of sense. It's hard to otherwise explain this kind of quantity of marijuana on a single plane. By the way, he was flying back and forth from LA to Chicago on private planes all the time. We don't know if drugs were on any other planes. This was the only one that was seized, but this is a huge, huge amount.
And to be clear, Jason's not saying it was for him to make a side hustle money. You might give the drugs to people in the neighborhood at cost, at whatever you got them cheaply from the grow house, so that they can go out and make money, not necessarily to enrich Juice WRLD himself. But remember, he's also flying on private jets. He has a means to transport large amounts of drugs. You can't put it in your checked luggage when you go on Delta, but on a private jet, you have more leeway. This is also why the feds send drug-sniffing dogs to private jets all the time. We've seen this countless times in the newsroom. It's because the potential for trafficking guns, trafficking drugs is high on private jets. And
there were some drugs, ammunition on this plane. There's other, if you want to go online and do the deep dive, there are other more nefarious speculative ideas out there about what was happening on that plane, much more sort of speculation about higher level crimes. There really isn't any evidence for that. But nevertheless, they're out there if anybody wants.
We had to talk about it. This is not meant to tarnish his legacy in any way.
To justify this perplexing amount of marijuana that was on this plane. Perhaps Juice WRLD's death at just 21 years old, however stunning in the moment, was a predictable end to a life lived as his was. In his song Legends about the deaths of XXXTentacion and Lil Peep, Juice WRLD predicted his own demise, writing, "All legends fall in the making, dying young. What's the 27 Club? We ain't making it past 21. But these prescient lyrics are precisely what made Juice WRLD so popular and his short career so memorable. By talking openly about his struggles, Juice WRLD not only provided a voice for those facing similar issues, but also sparked important conversations about mental health and substance abuse within the rap world. Juice WRLD's influence remains potent in the music industry, with many artists citing him as an inspiration. His posthumous albums Legends Never Die and Fighting Demons, released to critical and commercial success, further cemented his legacy as a voice of his generation. But the establishment of his legacy does not lessen the tragedy of his demise, or what his death meant to the disruptive music scene he helped to create. As music critic John Caramachi wrote in the New York Times, "With Juice WRLD's death, the distorted blend of singing and rapping, boasting and pain that shaped SoundCloud rap feels like it reached its terrible conclusion. Rather than continuing to shape the sound of pop's next generation, it will likely be remembered with a combination of awe and regret. How did something so radical and so powerful implode so swiftly?"
I still see your shadows in my room. Can't take back the love that I gave you. It's to the point why